Hey everybody, it's Saturday, November 7th, and I found myself having space today. Space outside of the normal to-dos and the normal obligations and all the things that we create, that we connect ourselves to, that require our time and that require our thoughts and that require our energy. And we commit ourselves to these things, and sometimes it gets in the way of just having the space to look into yourself and just to kind of see what's left holding on. And something that I found myself thinking about that I wanted to share was, because I think it's practical. I think it's pragmatic and practical, so maybe you'll get something from it. Part of how I use meditation, which can be as simple as sitting there listening to my breath with my eyes closed, looking into my perception without necessarily telling a story about it. In other words, noticing that I have this consciousness, this sense of awareness, and that I can look into myself and I can notice, what am I experiencing in my body and in my mind? And if I'm just experiencing it in the present moment for what it is, without turning it into this story, without adding ideas and attachments and without adding the momentum of the choices we make. And I just sit here and I look into my perception. Now I could say, and I think this is where it's a slippery slope of perception and ideas. I could say I'm looking into the past, or I'm looking into the future, or I'm thinking about work, or I'm thinking about relationships, or I'm thinking about I'm looking into the thing that I call my life. I'm looking into the thing that I call the stories that I tell myself. But stepping back from that further and realizing, okay, if I'm just looking into my perception in this moment, in other words, this mind and this body is made to perceive, it's made to experience, it's made to feel, it's made to observe, it's made to connect. So if I'm just being the witness, being the observer to what my body, including my mind, are perceiving in this present moment, but I'm not telling a story about it. So I'm listening to my breath and I'm noticing the sensation of my breath. And then I'm noticing the sensation of my body and just surface things, sensory things like the temperature on my skin, or the feeling of the air in my nostrils, or the sounds in my ears. And then rather than just looking at the senses, I just look into perception. Without necessarily thinking, just looking into perception. And as I sit in that space, what I'm looking into is, okay, what is holding on? What is my mind preoccupied with? What is holding on? What stories am I telling myself? And I find that's a really good way to clear the space. I'm working with a veteran right now, and we work on this meditation that he does every night, about an hour before bed, because he says, when I lay down at night, that's when my mind starts thinking about everything. And I talked about how sleep is really surrender. Think about sleep. We're giving up conscious control of our waking time. We're literally closing our eyes for 8 hours and being totally and completely vulnerable for 8 hours. So of course we feel vulnerable in sleep. Of course our minds wander a lot before sleep, because we're literally going into a sort of unconsciousness or a different type of consciousness when we go into sleep. So part of what I've been working about with him is, how can you close your eyes, just notice the sensation of being in this moment, and then notice what is holding on. What are the sensations? What are the things that my perception is taking me into? Oh, my mind is telling this story about work. Oh, my mind is telling a story about the bills. Oh, my mind says this person has hurt me, or that person has hurt me, or I have not done this thing, or I am shameful, or I am fearful. And we fill our mind up and our body up with a lifetime of stories and attachments and injuries, and we never clear that space a lot of times. So you see people weighed down by trauma, weighed down by pain, weighed down by sadness and anger and fear and frustration and injury. And I think we're weighed down as a culture of people because we're all carrying around these stories. We're all co-creating these stories. We're all carrying the weight of trauma. Everyone has generational trauma. Everyone has a story that has trauma in it somehow. And somehow we carry all these stories around and we act out these stories. And then there are organizations and entities out there that utilize our stories in order to keep us separated and divided. And often we become good consumers and easily manipulated by buying into they're the ones that hurt us. They're the ones that hurt us. Yes, I am a victim of this. Yes, I am part of this and they are part of that. We create all these stories and all this separation, and it just takes on this momentum. I think that we are a culture of people, and now you could look at this as a global experience, that humanity has a lot of trauma work to do. Humanity has a lot to look into, to notice what is holding on, to notice the stories that we are telling ourselves, and to recognize we don't need to keep perpetuating these stories of trauma and injury, and you did this and I did this and they did this and they did that, and constantly creating and recreating this story of generational trauma. So reeling it back into the pragmatic point, I recognize that I use this thing we call meditation to look into what my mind and body are holding on to the stories that I'm telling myself, and to daily work on unraveling that. It's interesting. It's like you're going a little bit deeper into the cave. You're going a little bit deeper into the dark. You're going a little bit deeper into the perception. And really it's about, can I be honest with myself? Am I being fully honest with myself about what I am creating and how those creations are creating attachments and agreements with other people? And recognizing that I have created a whole life of to-dos and anxieties and fears and obligations, and bringing it home to today, just recognizing that I have filled my life with so many things that I'm actually keeping myself from doing completely and totally what I would be doing in the present moment if I wasn't making an excuse for myself, if I wasn't telling a story, if I wasn't saying, yeah, I would love to paint today, but I have to do this, but I have to do that, but I owe this, but and a lot of those things they're very legitimate in our story. We justify them completely. I've created this relationship. I've created this obligation. I've volunteered for this thing. Yeah, but I need to help this. All of those things have merit. All of those things are important. All of those things are a part of our journey of becoming. And also what I'm recognizing is that it's very easy to go into agreement with others. It's very easy to start telling ourselves stories. It's very easy for us to become so attached to something that it becomes who we are, and it actually creates a whole system of yeah, I would love to live this dream, but I have all this obligation and I have all these things I've created, and I'm beholden to those things. And I find that I use meditation, and I have for, and not just meditation, but just looking into my own perception and recognizing how that perception has created a certain thing, and systematically and daily using this practice we call meditation and deliberate choices and deliberate actions to unravel the story of obligation and excuse making and attachment. What would I be creating in this present moment if I wasn't saying, yeah, but? Now, as a simple process, but it takes a lot of work, and this is much more pragmatic. What would you need to do? What would you need to do to take full responsibility of what you have created in your life, and to start systematically looking at the attachments in your life and the obligations and all the things that are excuses that get in the way of what you say to yourself in your quiet moments about who you really are and what you really want to be? No one really knows who I am inside. We say it, we tell ourselves these things. What would you really be doing if you could systematically go through and start deciding what of my attachments and what of my creations and what of this story that I'm telling myself do I actually want to hold on to? Do I actually want to keep defending? Do I want to keep getting angry when I watch this particular news channel? Do I want to keep blaming other people for harming my life? Do I want to keep telling myself these stories? Or do I want to systematically clean up the relationships in my life, to take full responsibility for the relationships, be deliberate about the relationships you have, and don't just be passive or passive aggressive about certain relationships. Let those relationships go that you're being passive about. Those people don't need you to waste their time if you're not going to wholeheartedly dedicate yourself to that relationship. But that allows you to hold on to that core of relationship that is so important to you and nurture those relationships that you truly want to nurture. And likewise, what are the things that I have attached myself to? What kind of subscriptions do I have? What kind of jobs have I attached myself to? What sort of things do I obligate myself to? Do I volunteer myself to? What sort of disagreements have I created with people? What do I need to apologize for? What do I need to take full responsibility for so I can set someone else free and not hold them in bondage anymore? And I can also set myself free, and now I can focus my attention that much more on the thing that I keep saying I'm going to do or I want to do. Man, I sure would do this thing if I wasn't doing all these other things and these people weren't constantly hurting me or constantly causing problems in my life or constantly wasting my time. It's really hard to take full and complete ownership over the shit you create, particularly when it affects other people and other relationships, and we don't want to really take full responsibility, because that would take taking a good damn look in the mirror and being like, oh shit, I feel some shame about certain things. I feel some pain about certain things. I have some things to work on. So I was looking into that space today and not seeing a whole lot left. And that felt really good. Doesn't mean there's not work to do. Doesn't mean there's not a lot of places to explore. It's just to find myself in a quiet moment Have a wonderful day, everybody. Take care. We're here in Southern California. It's month 42 of the COVID shutdown. All supplies are low. All ammo is gone except for the bug assault, table salt exterminator. All the game has been disposed of. So we're down to hunting the great Southern California housefly. Fairly gamey on the flavor, but not a bad backstrap. It's just really tiny, real small. But we're making the most of our COVID lockdown. I see one over here. Whoa! I'll tell you what, let's go see what we got.